Really, I just want to cover three things. In fact, I want to cover just one thing. And that is, I just want to share a little bit of my passion for branding and my understanding of how powerful it is to help drive and steer and help a business find its direction. And I'm going to go into a little bit of the psychology of that, the principles behind that, the fundamentals behind that. And the other thing I'd like to sort of share with you really is that branding is not rocket science. That's sort of the thing I stand on, if you like. That's the pedestal I stand on. And that is, even though I've sort of run a branding agency and branding has been something that I sort of basically specialise in, one of the things I truly recognise is that branding is something that actually we all understand. It's a very sort of fundamental part of our nature rather than sort of a specific science or field. So it's not, it's something that we can all get our head around, and that would be my sort of key point for today. But the other thing here is that, let me just get rid of a couple of basic myths here, and I think I've already covered one of them, and that is that, a brand is not a logo. And again, maybe you've already heard this sort of expression because it's been something that I've been talking about for years, and I know that my colleagues in the industry have been talking about it for quite some time as well. It used to be sort of thought that the brand is the logo, the identity, the mark, and it's a very important part of a brand, of an organisation. It is a symbol, a mark, a graphic, a logo, a sort of a thing that people recognise and come to recognise, as is the name of your organisation. If you name your organisation, it's a little bit like, my name is Arthur Optenbrow, and that defines in a very large extent who I am. Maybe it doesn't define who I am, but certainly it's how people recognise me. The guy over there, the ones that try and describe me in a whole bunch of words, but just give me sort of the word Arthur or Art Optenbrow. There's a few sort of. So it's same with the naming of your business is very much at the core of your brand, and the logo is an extension of that. And I understand that, but I would say that a branding is much, much more than that as well. It goes into the heart of the organisation, into the drive, the principles, the purpose, the right at the core of why a business exists in the first place. I'll come back to that. And the other thing I think I've just been sort of hopefully starting to sort of open up in your mind is that branding is a board level strategic discipline. So it's a discipline in the sense that you don't just create a brand, or you can. I mean, brands are there by default. For better or worse, your brand exists. Whether you do anything or not, if you're not doing anything about your organisation, it still is a brand. It still is representing the way you conduct your business, is the way people perceive you. So make it a disciplined part of your business. Make it a strategic part of your business, and make it a board level. So in other words, at the top, the top management level, and don't delegate it down to the next level. Or if you're going to delegate, take complete control of it as well. So let's just have a little bit of a think about the idea of branding as it sort of, I guess my sort of principal tenet is that branding is something that is natural and absolutely sort of part of the way we are. And I would start with the idea that it's something that we already know and that it's inside your head. It really is absolutely deep within us. It's totally, we can't separate ourselves from our identity. We can't separate ourselves from what it is to be human and what it is to have a purpose, okay? And I mean, just to sort of, punch that idea home, I mean, the way we clothe ourselves, the way we dress, the way we mark ourselves, the way we wear makeup, the way we smell, the way we look, the way we talk, the way everything is to do with what we stand for. Look at things like national identities, look at things like corporate identities, look at things like community identities, look at things like village identities, the identity of your family, the identity of the individual. And again, I think, I'd like to sort of really drive home this idea that this is actually something we all know, This is something everyone here already knows, and all of your employees, all of your staff, we already know this. So it's really about wakening up the sort of awareness that we already have, and that when you start to do that, you start to become aware of the brand, the value of your organisation. If you're going to survive in this current market, then actually being extraordinary is probably the only option. Because being ordinary is something everyone does now. Everyone does ordinary to a very high level, in fact. Everyone's creating good product, good disciplines, good communication, good connections, good business. Everyone understands that you have to raise the game to a certain level to even be considered as a prospective supplier of goods or services to another organisation. So being extraordinary is probably the only option. And being extraordinary is, again, for me, it's about understanding what your identity is, what you stand for, and how you are different from, and how you stand out from the crowd. So hopefully I'm reinforcing the idea that really branding is something that you, if you're not already considering, or even if you are, that it's worth spending some time understanding and getting your head around it. Okay, really, really important subject. Obviously, it's my subject. I'm going to say that, aren't I? But I think you have to find an argument for yourself really there. And if it's finances that you're working on, then fine. If it's business strategy, it's fine. But just start thinking about branding as being something that drives the whole ship. There's a whole lot of books out there that talk about the sphere of influence and how branding is the idea that you put into someone else, that someone carries around about you, perception, all of those sorts of things. I'm going to give you a couple of a slightly different angle on this, and because what I believe is that there are sort of basically to understand branding, to get your head around it, let's have a really simple model here, and for me, let's just focus on just 6 things. That's the nature of our nature, to want to go somewhere, to be going somewhere always. It's part of the psychology of the way which we exist. We want a place that we're heading for. So, and we call that, we tend to call that a goal, which for me is very left brain. It's very sort of analytical, very specific, smart objectives, be specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-based. It's very left brain, very cool, very important, very helpful, because it is part of our sort of physical nature. We exist on this planet, we have places to go. So the other part of branding, the other sort of key element of branding is the environment in which we exist. And this is a great analogy because it fluxes, it changes, we've got so little control over it. And I think when we're running business, when we're creating businesses, and we're thinking about what's our environment, what's our target, what's our place that we're going for, and we think that it's a very simplistic, we simplify everything. We have to remember too that this is an incredibly complex, changing world that we exist in. The environment is constantly changing. So if you're going to build a business, build a brand, build personal identity, build who you have some success and develop your own success as a business, then you need to take on board that this environment that we're in is incredibly complex and constantly changing. Just like if you have a little boat, which let's use the boat as another metaphor, which might be the product or the business that you have, which is a little physical entity, a little boat. If you're setting off and you have a goal, you have a sort of an outcome that you're looking for, that really you're going to have the right sort of boat. You're going to have to construct it in the right way. You're going to have to go through a series of steps to get that boat seaworthy before you even take on sort of the journey across a vast, open, uncharted territory. And these, I'm just using this as a metaphor, obviously, and but I really want to drive home that branding, identity, purpose is as fragile and difficult and challenging as as getting in a little boat and going across a vast, open, unknown, uncharted territory. The other part of this is the flag, which I think is a lovely metaphor for the values that we stand for. Because if you look at boats and the flag, the Union Jack, or the Merchant Marines, or the Skull and Crossbones, or the French Navy, or whatever, or the Navy and the Merchant, there's all these different flags that represent for us we get an immediate sort of signal and information about the value structure, the value system that applies to that particular organisation. So values is really, really fundamental. And in this sense that one of the things that a lot of organisations struggle with, I think, again, in my experience, is that they put out there that we're going to have values of integrity, honesty, hard work. And the problem is that everyone has those values. Even the Skull and Crossbones crew have those same values. They just happen to work in a different set of values. But so being aware of our values and how they're distinct and different from other organisations is a really important part of this. Again, if we're going to be extraordinary, we have to stand apart. We have to be different from other organisations. Okay, so the other part of branding is to do with culture, all right, which is really the crew, the way the team work together, So you've got these physical things, you've got these very sort of definite left brain things, and you've also got these sort of much more difficult and challenging things of groups working together. And the thing about a boat, a good analogy for a boat too, is that you've got, if you've got tugboats or people pulling in different directions, then you'll never reach your goal. Whereas if you've got everyone working on the same value system, focused on the same direction, then you get real clarity about where you're all going. So one of the things about branding is very much about having singular purpose, about having clarity of purpose, about having that sort of congruency. Now, in psychological coaching, contemporary sort of personal development, all that sort of stuff, there's a lot of talk about congruency, about sort of having clear sort of, getting your voices to all work together on the same outcome. So I would say that they're the fundamentals, again, of what branding's about. So I've given you sort of like a simpler model as I can of the sort of the nature or the sort of the attributes or the aspects of what branding is really about. And I think, it's always great to look at other models, so sort of look at those models and sort of recognise in those models, what is it that they do that has allowed them to achieve the huge wealth, and I mean wealth in the broader sense, which is why I use the picture of Gandhi there as well. Well, I think it's an actor, not really Gandhi, but that sort of sense of sort of real purpose in their lives and fulfillment, if you like. And I think that's really, that's probably the driver of most people, both the employees and the leaders of organisations, is to sort of feel like we're really making a great contribution, we're doing great stuff, and we're getting rewarded for that in whatever form that is. And I asked the question, did they have smart objectives? Yeah, they probably did, actually. They're probably like any mechanic or any business with a machine, which is what a business becomes in many respects. They'll have their mechanics and their financial advisors, and they'll have all the very logical left brain aspects to this. But I think, my belief is that I think there's something much, much deeper that drives these people. And if we can sort of understand that and spend a bit of time in your business just getting back to a fundamental, and that is about finding a purpose, okay? And I think that's probably at the core of what drives these type of people. It's, they find a path, they find a route across that uncharted territory. They break new ground. They do things, they sort of step outside the box. They break the rules, but they also know how to engage with their audiences and connect with their audiences and find a way of sort of having sympathetic and empathetic connection with their audience. So I guess, in very simplistic terms, they are congruent, They are very clear about who they are, what they stand for, where they're going and why they exist and what their purpose is. And before you ask me to measure purpose, because I think that I think I've talked a bit about measurement, in the sense that there are lots of ways to measure a business and its success. Financially is probably the best way to measure a business, because in the end it's just black and white. But when you get to measuring purpose, it's a little bit trickier. It is a bit trickier. And that's, what I would say is that I'll use a metaphor again. And if we go back to the sort of ancient metaphor of travelling the sea and the journey across from one place to another, and sort of the passion that drives how people will achieve their objectives by having a really big, clear, sort of overriding purpose, which is slightly different from a goal, okay? The goal is sort of like, I'm going to go there, and I can measure it, and I can work out how I'm going to get there, and I'm going to sort of put these ducks in order, and I'm going to get the team and the technical support, and blah, 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 and I know I can get there. I can get a bulldozer and push my way through forests, and I can use all sorts of strategies to get to where I want to go. But if it's not being driven by purpose, it's quite likely, or by purpose, and I would go, am I going into the sort of spiritual domain? I don't think so. I'm talking about metaphor here. And I'm talking about what helps organisations and individuals get driven so that they're all following the same path, they're all driving in the same direction, they're all getting excited about the same things, and they're all analysing problems and any issues that they might have from the same hymn sheet, you might say, or from the same perspective, because does it achieve our our objectives, or does it achieve our goals, or does it achieve our purpose? You know? And again, I'll go back to sort of basic psychology, or the basic biology, you might say, of the left brain being very analytical about separation, being being our individuality, our separateness, our identity, our sort of logical framework, all that sort of stuff, hierarchy of values and all that sort of stuff. And the right side, which is much less charted territory, much less understood, because you can't use words to describe it almost, you know. The right brain, or the way in which we connect to our community and our sense of wholeness and our sense of connectedness to everything and our sense of nothing's right, nothing's wrong, everything's fine, everything's yes. You know, the right side of the brain's a curious animal, if you like, and a curious part of our nature. But I think that if we don't listen to that part of us, that is the driving purpose as well, the unconscious part of us, the part that we can't put words to. There's a sense there that sort of connects us. Now, what I am suggesting, I was going to say I'm not suggesting that you get all sort of spiritual about this, but what I am suggesting is that you recognise this nature of your organisation, the nature of your organisation that has this part of it. If it doesn't have this, if it doesn't have the spirit, you might say, you know, what's the spirit of an organisation? We've created these words, spirits and religion, not religion, but God and all that sort of stuff. Human beings have created these words, in my opinion anyway. I mean, not everyone has the same opinion as that, but to help us understand the sort of the very, very, sort of difficult to understand nature of the universe, you might say. But anyway, so that's what I would say is purpose. And the second part, and I think that these guys, these people, these organisations, anyone that you look at that has achieved amazing, absolutely amazing things, haven't done it with just purpose. It's all very well to have purpose, but having a really disciplined approach. And a disciplined approach is about using really beautifully orchestrated left brain logical processes to make sure that you bring the science in as well as the art, you might say. And I'll just give you a sort of like an adaptation of a model that I think is quite well bandied about. And this is really a problem-solving model rather than a branding model. But, and it comes to me from a guy called Wally Owens. I don't know if any of you know. He's quite well-respected. Some people call him the father of branding in the UK. And he was running a business called Wolf Owens, and that organisation was responsible for First Direct and Barclays. I think they're branding Barclays, and Orange was another one of their brands. So really, huge brands that were not just about their colour, Orange. First Direct was very much, the brand really was about the way it operated in the marketplace and taking telephone banking to the market, which was so resistant to the idea of taking a telephone call to talk to your banker. And you think about the change that has happened since then. But I had the good fortune to be mentored by Wally for about a year, 4 years ago, and he was telling me about how he was sitting with the board of directors for I think it was First Direct, and they said to him, but Wally, this fanciful idea, this idea that's sort of way out there. I mean, what am I meant to do with that idea? I need some, I need evidence. I need some, real. And obviously there'd been a lot of evidential stuff provided up to that point. But in the end, Wally just said, look, you do your job, I'll do my job, and then that's it. I'm the expert. This is my specialism. This is what I do. I build brands, and I've got a great track. So in the end, they left that. Now I said to Wally, I said, look, Wally, how can you be so sure? What is it that you are so sure about that you can stand there and say, let's launch this, this huge concept into the world and make that it's going to take off? And his answer was very simple, and that is he trusts the process. Okay, so there is a process it's a problem-solving process, it's a creative process, it's the process that that we're constantly going through every minute, every day, as we step and walk, as we talk, as we interact with other people. It's a very, it's a basic process of the way in which we solve problems. But I've defined it in terms of the words as they associate with the program that you might go through to develop a brand within your business. Brand discovery, brand design, and brand development are the 3 basic areas. But the key point here is that the discovery process is really, it's not an analytical it's a sort of, again, a balance between analytical and I haven't found a word for the other side. I keep calling it etheric, but intuitive. Let's call it intuitive, okay? The logical and the intuitive side. You know, to understand where your business is and where it's going, you have to be really, really honest with yourselves and really lay out on the plate and go into discovery mode. And discovery mode is sort of where you become very curious, where you become very playful, where you become very open-minded, where you become very uncritical. So it's very right-brain stuff rather than left-brain, where you start to criticize and analyze and organize. Okay, so you know, very much for me, to understand where you are as a business and where you're going, you have to start with the discovery and understand that. And you might take, you know, this might be a constant thing. You know, I mean, I'm building a business with colleagues in London, and you know, we're constantly asking the question: where are we going? What is it? What is it that we do? What do we do best? What are we doing badly? You know, and I guess I'm really saying what you're all doing anyway. So sort of build on that, sort of understand that as it works. It's about discovering what you do, constant process of discovery. Now, if you brought an agency in, or if you brought colleagues in to help you create your brand or manage your brand, it's quite normal for them to go through that process as part of their process of understanding what you're about. It's a beautiful process if you do it in a very systematic way, because it comes to a place of real clarity of understanding, and it gives you the next step. And we talk about 3-year plans, 1-year plans, 6-month plans, 3-month plans. You know, it gives you clarity about the next period, you know, which we all need. There's a little formula that I'd like to put forward for you, and that's, I call it the magic formula. You've got SMART objectives: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-based. I learned that years ago, and you can see I'm pretty, it's probably wrong. I mean, some people call it not realistic, but anyway, there's all sorts of versions of SMART, but you know, you get the idea. It is smart, and it's very sort of intelligent, so it's very, you know. Anyway, this is the magic one, okay? So the first two are probably the fundamental ones, you know, to ask the question. Look at your brand and, you know, look at your organisation, look at the way it operates, look at the way it picks up the phone, look at the way people tell the story about your brand, look at the way you sell the brand, look at the way you introduce it. And is there a coherent, understandable, and is there a clear message? And is that an accurate reflection? Okay, so is it really meaningful? Is it coherent? Is there a coherent idea, a central idea? Absolutely essential. If your organisation has got lots of ideas and you're going out with lots and lots of ideas, now that may be a function of your adaptation, your desire to, you know, check out markets and test out opportunities. Fine, but look for clarity, look for coherence. The third one is, has it got legs, or is it a goer? Okay. Has the idea and the way in which you're representing it, has it got legs? Does it have stories? Can you develop lots of stories around your name, around your story, you know, around your business? Okay. The fourth one is, it's all very well to have those three, but if it doesn't have sort of like a certain infectious quality or you know, irresistible quality, it's not going to get picked up and run. People are going to carry it. So that's what I would say is the fourth one. And the final one is creative, and I don't mean creative as in pretty pictures, but I mean as in, well, it might be that. It might be that it looks, you know, beautiful and works well. Okay, so that's just one way of measuring, or one way of sort of looking at yourself and saying, well, actually, am I getting something right here? Am I doing it right? Now, what I was hoping to do was cover 3 points today. One was just to give you a sense of the importance of branding, and I hope that that's, you know, for yourself, you become clear about that, or if you're already, you know, I've supported that argument. The second one is a bit of an understanding of how it works, and the third one is just to give you a little bit of an idea of how to measure.